Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts and welcome back to day number 18 of March Madness. Today's page map sketch comes from October of 2024. I pulled out this really old collection from Lime Twist called Happy Go Lucky, and I don't have a lot of embellishments left for this collection, so I pulled out the Fun Flower Festival from Kelly Bell Designs to add some embellishments to the collection. I'm going to add these pieces to my mat and get them over to my silhouette so that they can be print and cut. I pulled out this really pretty dark purple shimmer paper that matches almost perfectly to the florals that are in this collection. The main piece that I'm going to use on the background is this floral here that has the purple flowers as well as the pink and blue flowers and then some green leaves. I'm going to cut 4 different strips to add to the top and bottom of this layout. I am always trying to save paper, especially this collection. It is super old, but I love all of it. And these papers are thin. I'm talking like copy paper thin. I think that I have the original pieces that are a little bit thicker, but then I also have pieces that are from like one of those super old paper pads. This is the second Flower and Garden Festival layout that I'm going to be doing this month, and this layout is going to focus on the topiaries. The last layout, which I'll link here for you, focused mainly on the food. The Flower and Garden Festival is definitely a festival that I go to where I pretend to know anything at all about flowers. I am the worst person when it comes to plants and flowers. I do not have a green thumb, but if you shape them in Disney characters, I am all about it. It just amazes me how beautiful these topiaries are that Disney puts together. The details that go into them are just mind-blowing. Now, you might be looking at these photos thinking, hey, those are really pretty photos. Lisa did an amazing job taking those photos. And you would be half right on that. They are very pretty photos. However, I did not take them. I have no problem taking photos from Facebook or other pages of people who have shared their photos. These particular ones actually came from the Disney's Facebook page. They always take photos of the topiaries, and these photos are going to be when there's not a lot of people in them, which is something that I'm never going to be able to do. So I pull them down from Facebook and add them to my layout. I got the floral paper on the background, and then I did add this pink cardstock on top of it. The pink matches the pink florals in the background paper. And that really does tone down that deep purple. When I first pulled it out, especially in the video, and I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness, that is super dark. But the bright pink of the cardstock really does contrast well with that deep purple. So I'm going to start working on the left-hand side of the layout. I'm going to do the exact same thing where I am laying the floral pieces in the background, and then I'm going to cover up the hole that is created with that pink cardstock. Now, the sketch calls for 3x3 photos, and a majority of the photos I were able to bring them down to a 3x4, and then it made it pretty easy to cut it down to a 3x3. But 2 of the photos were not able to cut down to a 3x4 just simply because of the details that are in the photo. So what I decided to do was just use 3x4 photos instead, and I do have those 2 photos that are closer to like a 3x5 size. I do use Walgreens to print out my photo, and they have the option when you add the photo to your cart to edit the photo, and then you can make the photo the true size, and that does tend to bring the photo down just a little bit, so it wasn't a true 4x6, and I was able to make them closer to the 3x4 size. Over on the left-hand side of the layout, I did decide to bring in this green striped paper. I felt like that would really bring in the green leaves from the background paper. I do also have the 6x6 paper pad, so I started to look through that to find my strips for the right-hand side of the layout. I do end up with the green tone-on-tone gingham, the pink and white chevron, and then in the center, I'm going to add the paper that has the butterflies as well as the floral. And I feel like having the 2 kind of solid papers, which would be the green tone-on-tone gingham and the pink and white chevron on the outsides, and then the butterfly paper in the middle of them, it does give it enough contrast against the floral paper in the background. I'm going to go ahead and get these 3 pieces of paper down. Now I did have to cut them in half so that I could have some at the top and bottom since they are only 6 inches long. I want you to keep an eye on the 3 smaller pieces that are still on my desk. You can see that I'm adding the 3 pieces to the top using my T-square ruler to make sure that they're straight. And on my mat, you can see the other 3 pieces from the 6x6 paper pad. Once I get the pieces down on the top, I'm going to use my trimmer to cut off the excess. If I was a magician, this is where I would make that pink chevron paper disappear. I sped the video up quite a bit, but I wanted to leave this in because I spent a significant amount of time looking for that chevron paper. I pulled out everything that I could. Eventually, I ended up turning off the camera because I could not find it anywhere. Now, if you kept your eye on the pink chevron paper, you would have seen that I laid my layout on top of it. And even though I picked up my layout to look at it, it had stuck to the back of my layout. I felt like I was losing my mind. This isn't the first time I've had things go missing, and most of the time they do end up being like right out of my line of sight, but this one was pretty extreme. All right, so now that I've gotten the background paper down on the layout, I did decide to go ahead and start to pull off my embellishment pieces that I cut out. The larger piece does come from the word Flair, and I'm going to use that as my title. The Mickey head topiary is actually one that sits in a pot and it has a plant that it's attached to, but I decided that I didn't want that this time, so I just used my knife tool in Silhouette to cut that edge off so that I would just have a Mickey head topiary as well as the heart topiary. I did have to use my X-Acto knife just to punch out some of the center pieces of this word Flair, just because they were kind of small, and sometimes Silhouette has a little difficulty cutting out things that are that small. Even though this word Flair is pretty large, it's actually going to take up a nice size on the left-hand side of the layout. You can see that I'm going to add it to the green stripe, and then I'm going to add my photos back down. At first, I thought about having the 2 photos that were a little bit larger, which is Miss Piggy and Kermit, as well as the Encanto photos on the left-hand side, but I really liked having the contrast of both of them being on either side of the layout. So I decided to move Miss Piggy and Kermit over to the right, and then I did trim down some of the 3x4 photos, especially the ones that had some dead space on either side, so that I could fit all 3 of those photos on the bottom row inside of the pink cardstock. I'm then going to add the 3 photos at the top. And this also gives me the ability to add the grid, but it not be one right on top of the other one, so that even though the photos are a little bit smaller than 3x4, you really can't tell. On the left-hand side, Asha is my favorite. She was the featured topiary a few years ago. Wish is one of my most recent favorite movies. I love that movie. I think that it is so underrated. There are so many Easter eggs in it, and for a true Disney adult, it's just such a fun movie to watch. I did decide to add a couple of larger banner pieces. I remembered seeing one banner piece that I had used from a previous layout in the green gingham that I had left in my 6x6 paper pad. So I pulled that one out, and then I also used the blue stripe paper. When I laid the green gingham paper down, I added my adhesive to the back. The back of it has some buttons on it, and so I laid that down and I was like, you know what, I kind of like that side better. So I took the adhesive off and then turned it over and had the buttons on top as well as that blue striped paper. And then I'm going to add my word Flair on top of it. I am going to use some fun foam on the back of it just to pop it up a little bit, and I had to add a lot, so I did cut a majority of that out for you guys. And even after I put all of that fun foam down and then I went to add the liquid adhesive, there were several pieces that I had missed, so I had to add even more fun foam to it. I like to have fun foam on the back of all of my pieces. I know some people just put them on the edges, but I feel like that allows for bowing when they're in the albums. So I just add the adhesive strips or the fun foam to the entire back so that it prevents that. I did add this piece over on the far right hand side. This is actually the branding strip from the 6x6 paper pad. It's a white paper and it has gray stripes on it. So I added that, and then I'm going to start to build up that cluster. I pulled out my bottle caps, which I'm absolutely loving using those lately. I go through phases with those. I've had them for a very long time, and I'll use them for multiple layouts, and then I won't use them for a long time. That's one of the main reasons that I really enjoyed not scrapping chronologically, because you will never be able to tell when I was in a phase of my layouts because they're all spread out. So I do add the green circle that has the Mickey head inside of it, and I put that in the white bottle cap. For that cluster that I'm going to start to build up, I do add one of the purple florals, and then I'm going to start to work on the bottom cluster. I do add the Mickey head topiary up on fun foam, and I'm going to add that to the bottom right hand side. I then also stick in one of the orange florals. Now there are no orange color in this paper pad, but there is orange in my title piece, so I decided that I would go ahead and add the orange flower, and that kind of ties everything together. Up at the top, I added a word flare that says Magical Garden. I do have this small little baggie where if I make embellishments for a collection, I will add them to this bag. Like I said, I don't have a lot of embellishments for this collection, but I love it so much, and it's not one that I'm ready to purge yet. So I will go through my dies trying to find pieces that will work for a layout that I'm working on. Sometimes I'll cut a bunch of extras and they will end up in this little bag. So I did pull out several of those. I had a purple heart that I added to the top right cluster. I also had a viewfinder that I had used on a recent layout. I am super excited that Allison Davis just featured me in her Facebook group. And it was the layout where I had used this paper collection and that die. I had a ton of them on there. I had an extra one, so I went ahead and added that over to the far right-hand side. I will link that video here if you haven't seen it yet. Over on the left-hand side, I decided to add another Mickey head topiary, and then I also added a word flare that says Beauty in Bloom, and I did decide to put that up on fun foam. And I'm just continuing to build up the clusters. I'm taking some of these florals and cutting them in half and adding them to the clusters. I also found this arrow that matches the heart in the upper right hand corner, and I felt like that tied the two clusters together. So I added that right below the Mickey head. And then right above the title, I'm going to add a couple of floral pieces as well in the purple, pink, and blue, and then I'm also going to add a heart up there as well. I felt like I needed another orange so that I could have a visual triangle of the orange, so I did add that up to the top right. So now I have it at the top right, the bottom right, and then in the title. I've had this little card for a long time, and I keep trying to use it on every layout, but it never makes it to the layouts. I am showing you here that this is where I'm going to add my journaling. That's why I am leaving that space intentionally opened, because I do have a little bit to say about this layout. I then pulled out my color boxes in green, purple, and pink, and I'm going to add some enamel dots around. I found these Doodlebug hearts that are in green. I added those. And then these purple enamel dots are not really enamel. They're more of a matte color, so I added those around, and then I found some pink hearts to add to each one of the clusters as well. And then I did pull out these pops of color. I picked these up at scrapbook.com. I will link them below. This one is in the Snowflake, and I really do like this color a lot because it does have some glitter, but it brings in the color that is whatever you put it on. So on the orange flower where I added it, it almost looks orange. All right, that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did do my journaling offline, and it says, "This is the time of year that I go to Epcot and pretend I know all about flowers. The 2023 festival featured an Encanto theme, featuring Maribel, Isabella, Antonio, and Luisa. Each topiary seems to tell its own story, bringing beloved characters to life with intricate details and bursts of colors." I did also add some sequins around my journaling. All right, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.